Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of DEMOPOD, the Demolition podcast. We are rocking and rolling, and we're having so much fun. A little bit of technical difficulties on my end this time, and I'm the guy in the studio, so I can't even yell at Barry or Bill or make fun of them tonight. It was on my end, apparently. So
this is 10, right?
You know, it's technically 10 because we did that special tribute episode, but if we're following the canon, it's 9, but you know,
Number 9.
we'll call it whatever we want. Episode 5,000. How about that?
Well, we're having fun.
And that's all that matters. And we've got a lot of cool things that are coming up. We're always working hard to try and figure out what we're going to do for the next episodes. There's a lot of ground to cover. Not just with you guys as Demolition, the tag team, but also your singles careers and everything. And we've been telling people since we started this to send their questions over on Instagram to the Demolition Pod Instagram page. And with the YouTube subscribers blowing up the way that they have over the last several weeks and months, we get a lot of questions on YouTube as well. So we want to tell you to make sure that you keep those questions coming, both on YouTube as well as on our Instagram page. And our Instagram page is at Demolition Pod. We couldn't have DemoPod. Apparently someone took it. I don't know who, but someone took it. So it's at Demolition Pod on Instagram. You can also follow Bill and Barry at Search and Destroy You and follow me at Ryan Maher Comedy. So make sure you get on social media and spread the word about this podcast. You guys have been doing an excellent job sharing all the information, letting people know about DemoPod. And I don't know if you guys saw, we're actually starting to get covered by some of the wrestling websites. Some of the stories you're telling, people are picking up and running with them. Have you noticed that?
No, that's nice. I haven't noticed, to be honest with
That's
you.
huge, but we got to make sure everybody subscribes too.
Oh, of course. Very, very important to subscribe to the YouTube channel and to follow Demolition Pod on Instagram. The reason I bring up that we're being covered by the wrestling sites is on our Mr. Fuji episode a few episodes back. You guys told some stories, and we told the story that has been long time wrestling folklore about Mr. Fuji grilling a dog and feeding it to Adnan Al-Kaisi. And someone decided to run with that story, so much so that the family of Adnan Al-Kaisi came out and has disputed that story. So I said, of all the things that we've talked about, that's what they choose to cover.
But didn't they come out and say it wasn't their dog?
That's what they said. Yeah, it wasn't their dog.
You know, it might have been somebody else's dog. We don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But it just blows my mind that with all the hours of content that we've put out there, that's what people decide to run with. And I guess that says a lot, not just about the pro wrestling media, but the media at large, really. But for this episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We are going to go into the mailbag, so to speak, and we're going to ask some of the questions. I mean, we have Axe and Smash here, and a lot of you guys have asked a lot of great questions. I want you to keep submitting them, but I also want you to realize that a lot of the questions that get sent in have already been covered, and they've been covered a lot on past episodes. So get creative. Think outside the box. And I think we should start off with the first question. It comes from Instagram. Mr. Nick, N. McDonald is the name, and he asked, was it originally Big John Studd instead of Hacksaw Jim Duggan as a tag team partner at SummerSlam 1989? I was there. Of course, it's an iconic moment with Jim Duggan coming out in the Demolition mask, King Duggan with the crown, lifted up the mask, having the USA Demolition style face paint. Is it true that originally Big John Studd was supposed to be in that position?
I don't recall that at all, to be honest with you. I mean, do you, Barry?
No, I never heard that. And we were really excited with Jim Duggan coming in and being our partner because he just makes it so exciting, and it just, helped make us, and we didn't know that he was going to paint his face like that either. At least I didn't. Did you, Bill?
No,
because when he came out and had that face, it was like, that's the greatest thing ever. He was just phenomenal.
So
but I never heard John Studd.
So great that now Mattel has actually released the action figures
with
Hacksaw Jim Duggan in that American flag Demolition style face paint. Well, I mean, since we mentioned the face paint, we have to go to the next question. And this came all the way from Belgium. It's from a woman named Robin. She just has it listed as Robin from Belgium. Another note that when you ask the question, feel free to tell us how you'd like to be addressed on the podcast. Robin writes, very much enjoying the podcast. I have a question for Demolition about the face paint. How did they come up with the designs? After a while, Smash stuck to the spiky design and mostly white and red, sometimes with a bit of yellow. Axe, however, kept changing the design now and then. Was there a reason to it? Thank you for your time, Robin from Belgium. Take it away, guys.
Well, I can speak for myself. I would vary it depending on how I felt that night, to be honest with you. I had some basic concept of how I wanted it, but I would change the color combinations periodically, and also one of the big factors, and I know Barry will say the same thing, was how much time we had to prepare, because with flight delays or traffic or whatever, and then getting to the building and one going through a medical checkup on a lot of places, and then getting dressed and getting prepared, it varied on the time. If I had more time, I'd be a little more creative. So,
Yeah. And I can remember the first day of TV down in Tampa, Florida. I remember coming up to you, Bill, and saying, what in the heck are we going to do? How are we going to paint our faces? And we had this makeup that was really kind of bad. And you just put it on there, and it wasn't really even a design or anything. We just had to change colors on it. But it was so bad. I don't know if you felt that, Bill, but I thought it was terrible. And then we had the next show or something. Then we started drawing lines and doing things. So it was so hard to figure out what to put on there. And I just thought, lightning bolts, or something with those deals. And you were kind of half lightning bolts and something else. And then it just kind of stuck. And then, like, Bill was saying, it's, how much time do you have to put the makeup on? And then it got to the point where it got pretty easy doing it. And then you could kind of switch colors and everything.
Were there ever any times where you knew you were hitting a traffic delay, or maybe the flight had gotten delayed and the baggage claim ran late, where you were like, oh no, and you actually had to start doing makeup in the car while one of you drove? Did you ever encounter situations like that?
no, fortunately, it's tricky enough to draw straight lines. But I'll tell you what we both do now. We both have understanding when our wives and we want to leave early and be someplace at a certain time, and they say, I need a little bit of extra time. So we all tell them we're going to leave like a half hour ahead of time. So we leave on time.
And then also you have, the WrestleMania makeup job, and then you have the spot show makeup. So it kind of isn't very good when it comes to the little small shows, but the big shows, you take your time and put it on.
I think you guys just let the entire world know why you've both had such long-standing, successful marriages, because you've never been able to yell at your wife for taking too long to get ready. I mean,
the only problem, though, we'd yell at them when they'd take our makeup.
Yeah, no, it's like, I'm doing my makeup, Barry. I'm doing my makeup, Bill. Oh, honey, I understand. I know the feeling. So, that's really cool. Yeah, because I was always interested in that. I mean, I have no artistic ability whatsoever. I mean, I'm a comedian. I do writing projects. You tell me, hey, I need 50 jokes on this topic by tomorrow. I got you. But if you ask me to sit down with a pencil or a pen or a marker and sketch or paint, I mean, it's just completely foreign to me. And sometimes, I mean, the makeup that you guys, and the makeup that you're still applying nowadays at all these conventions, it's very intricate. But now at this point, you could probably do it half asleep, I would imagine.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, still putting paint on. When we were up in Connecticut over the weekend, a bunch of fans came up to us and said that they were so happy that we still put the face paint on.
Mm.
And I said, well, it's part of our character. It's who we are, and we enjoy it. And they said, well, it makes good memories for us. And I just wanted to mention that and thank those people for coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you get to meet Kiss and take a photo with them and they don't have the makeup on, it takes away from it. You want to see them as you remembered them. I'm sorry, Barry, I didn't mean to.
It's kind of funny because we were sitting at the table and I told Bill, I said, I'm going to get my grandson here. He's a big gamer, and it was at a gamer convention. So I get him on here with the live chat and everything. He looks at me and I got this makeup on and he's like shocked. Look at his papa's got dang makeup on, and I show Bill and he's like, he couldn't even imagine that
That's
at our age we're still putting makeup on our face. It's kind of funny.
That's so cool, though. So cool. And it really does give those fans an authentic experience, which is why I said long before you guys asked me to host this podcast. I mean, when it comes to giving the fans the experience, you guys rank up there as fan favorites, truly. I mean, people are always talking about how you guys go out of your way to really spend time with the fans, answer their questions. So it's awesome. And I think this podcast episode itself is going to prove that, because we have so many great questions that came in. One that I want to touch on, it came in from Peter Dewar, and it was over on Instagram, because we discussed it a little bit in the opening episode where we talked about the formation of Demolition. And I think we might have touched on it a little bit during the Mr. Fuji episode that we did, but we didn't go too in depth. The question from Peter Dewar is, how did Johnny Valiant take being replaced by Mr. Fuji? Were there any issues? Because we all know that Randy Colley decided to step aside so that Barry could come in, and that was an amicable parting. He said, you guys take it and run with it. How did Johnny Valiant take being cast aside?
I never heard any statements or any sensed any bad feelings at all. I think Johnny, there again, was a professional, and he had been in the business years before we were. I actually think that he recognized our concern, and it wasn't against Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't against his ability or his mic skills or work skills. It was just the fact that his character didn't meet what we felt we were trying to present with Demolition.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to, he was a little had comical leanings, and we didn't want that at all.
Absolutely. Didn't fit the gimmick.
No.
Well, yeah, and we talked to Johnny, all the time after that, and he never ever said anything to me. It was almost like he knew it too. His gimmick and our gimmick just wasn't. It just clashed, and that happens. And I think he knew that it was time for him to go with some other tag teams and everything. So it was a good situation.
Yeah, and he was a guy that, I got to know him and work with him a little bit towards the end of his life. He was actually, I don't think enough people really know this or give him credit for it. He was the first pro wrestler that I know of that ventured into stand-up comedy. Nowadays there's a lot of guys that do it. Sometimes it's a one-man show or whatever. But Johnny was hitting the pavement, doing the clubs in New York City, and then he built his own one-man show, An Evening with Johnny Valiant, and he was a character through and through. So yeah, I could never really understand how that type of outgoing, extroverted, comical personality would fit with the ass-kicking nature of Demolition. So I'm glad to know that he didn't take it personally, and he understood that it was, for lack of a better phrase, best for business.
Right.
Jason Ricci, JR10414 on Instagram, wants to know, with the Legends contracts that you now have with WWE, do you think WWE will create a legacy tag title specifically for Demolition for sale? Now, they do this with some of the guys. I know, Jake the Roberts, I think they made some kind of a special thing. It wasn't a belt, but it was like a plaque. And they do make these specialty titles. The Undertaker has one of the old Winged Eagle title. How cool would a Demolition legacy tag team title look? Has there been any conversations about that?
No, it certainly would be nice, but other than the fact that we know that there's going to be some figures coming out after the first of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about all we have heard at this point. But I think someone mentioned to us there's a trading card, or is that something right, Barry? Or
Yeah, a trading card is worth a lot of money or something. They put it in somebody else's cards, and if yours is in there, then it's worth some big money or something. I don't know. But the office doesn't tell us anything. We haven't talked to them since we were at the Hall of Fame ceremony. So we haven't talked to anybody. So we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, my mind is blown when I've learned exactly about how these trading cards have become so popular again. amongst collectors. I mean, there was always a market for baseball and football cards, but now these different, for lack of a better word, gimmicks that they have, where there's these, one of 50s or one of 5,000s, and they put them in. I mean, it really is fascinating, and for collectors, it's very exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of Demolition merch we see coming out. Hopefully, it is more than just the action figures, but those action figures are going to be great. And speaking of action figures and characters, I mean, they could have an endless supply for both of you men. And that leads us to the next question from Ken Johnson on Instagram, Ken J2184. And he wants to know, well, first he says, huge fan of Demolition, always one of my favorite tag teams. Question for the guys, of all the characters they had outside of Demolition, what was their favorite? So you guys, you aren't just Axe and Smash, but if you had to put Axe and Smash on the shelf, what are you most proud of? What did you enjoy the most?
Well, for me, I mean, to be honest with you, I really enjoyed Demolition the most because of the longevity of the tag. I had good success with Mass Superstar, so I would say that'd probably be my other favorite, not only here in the States, but primarily overseas in Japan. So that would be my second go-to.
Yeah, for me, I actually loved all of the gimmicks I've had. I really enjoyed trying to be a different character, but I suppose Crusher Khrushchev was my second best, and it was because of Ivan and Nikita and Nikolai Volkov and Jim Neidhart. I had a lot of great partners, and we had so many good matches with so many tag teams. It was probably Crusher Khrushchev.
And I want to talk about Crusher Khrushchev a little bit. It's going to lead us to the next question, but I got the privilege of getting to interview Nikita Koloff a number of years ago during one of the 80s Wrestling Con virtual signings, and he told me the amount of work that he had to put into that character. I mean, he legally changed his name to Nikita Koloff, and he had Ivan coaching him, so much so that it got to a point where they were having Russian propaganda magazines sent to his house so that his neighbors in his Atlanta apartment complex really believed that he had immigrated over here from Russia. So I would imagine that you, Barry, being a part of that stable, part of that team, I mean, a lot of that had to rub off on you. Was there pressure being put on you to really play up the fact that you were Russian?
Well, I was actually an American that loved Russian, so I was an American turncoat. So I could speak English and I could do all that. But, I grew up with Nikita, and you couldn't ask for a nicer guy. And I never, ever thought that, when I was in the wrestling business, that he would get in the business and become a Russian and do what he was doing. But when I moved from Florida to Charlotte, his apartment was right above my apartment. So we were together and we traveled together, trained together, everything. And we used to go to the bank, and he would make like he couldn't speak English, and he'd say all this gibberish to me, and I'd go, oh, okay. And then I'd say, yeah, he needs to take $20 out of the bank account. And the people were like, he doesn't speak English. I said, well, he can understand a little bit, but not very much, And then we'd go to a restaurant, and then he'd point on the deal, and he'd start talking, and I'd have to order for him. And then Ivan would. And I mean, he played this gimmick all the way. So everybody in that territory really thought he was from Russia. Wow. I mean, he did a phenomenal job.
All the more reason why it is so impressive that he was able to have that incredible face turn after being such a dastardly heel. And of course, it stemmed from the tragic car accident with Magnum TA and not being able to wrestle anymore, but to be able to be such a dastardly downright heel and then flip it over like that, really a testament to how great he was as a performer. And that leads me to the question from Benzi Gabor, and this was over on YouTube. Thanks. Great episode as always. I do have a question, please. I noticed from watching the earlier episodes of DemoPod that when Barry was Crusher Khrushchev, some of the other wrestlers would call him Crush as a nickname. Barry mentioned this when telling some stories. Since some of these wrestlers also joined WWF, did some wrestlers continue to call Barry Crush while he was in the WWF? I imagine calling him that for years, it may have stuck for them. It's ironic that somebody called Crush would join his team, and so I'm wondering if there were wrestlers still calling Barry Crush, what happened when Crush joined Demolition? I can imagine it became very confusing. Thank you.
It's funny you said that because still to this day, they do call me Crush. If I'm in that territory and the guys I worked with and everything, they call me Crush because that's what it was. But I don't think anybody from that territory was around us up in the WWF at the time when Crush was there. I don't think there was. But just the other day, George South, good friend of ours, we were at somewhere. Crush, how you doing? Or the Rock and Roll Express. Hey, Crush, how you doing? It's not Barry or Smash or Repo Man. It's Crush
or Blacktop Bully.
Yeah.
You've had a lot. You really have had a lot, man.
Yeah. Some guys call me Bully yet, but
okay, all right, very cool.
Those are guys from high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are guys from before you were in the gym with Hogan. Those are the guys. This one came from Paul Davies, and this was news to me. This was something that I have never heard, but Paul brought it up, and it was in June 1991, a month after Demolition were disbanded, an arcade game called WrestleFest was released. Now, I knew that Demolition was a member of the roster in WrestleFest, and that's going to play a very big role in an episode that we have coming up after this one. But playable tag team, the only playable tag team, was Demolition. The bosses at the end of the game were the Legion of Doom. Were Barry and Bill aware of the game or aware of why Demolition were the only playable tag team in it, despite the WWF disbanding the team just before its release? WrestleFest was released with the Legion of Doom being the tag team champions. However, they would not actually win the belts for the first time until SummerSlam in 1991 in August, which gave away the finish 2 months early. And the inclusion of Demolition suggests they were still highly ranked within the WWF. Just to expound on that, we discussed in the previous episode that we released that I kind of think WWEF just lost its way with the tag team division and really had no idea what they were doing because they broke up the team, but you were the only options. If you wanted to play a tag team match in that arcade game, you only could play as Demolition.
I don't recall that game at all. I know it was issued, but when people mention WrestleFest, for me, what comes into my mind is an actual live event that took place up in New York.
Okay.
And I think it was an outdoor event, wasn't it, Barry?
Yep, that was a big one.
So I wasn't aware of the game WrestleFest, so I really can't comment with any knowledge on that.
Well, I remember that WrestleFest was like in Minnesota. It was at a pizza place. It was at a couple other ones. It's a big arcade game, and you and I were on that. And then later on, Crush was on it. And was that the same game, Ryan?
Well, there was WrestleFest was you and Crush, from what I believe, and that was the sequel to Superstars. Now, I was a young kid. Yeah, Superstars was the original arcade game. That was a little before my time. I want to say when WrestleFest came out, I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and it was a staple in, back then, all the arcades that still existed. There would be a line to play WrestleFest, and if you were with a buddy and you wanted to play a tag team match, your only option was to play as Smash and Crush Demolition.
Right. So the Superstars was the one that Bill and I was on then.
Okay.
I don't know that. That's why I'm asking. But I remember playing us at, in fact, it was my son's birthday party or something. We went to some big arcade and there was a game, and then my whole hockey team that I was coaching was playing, and they couldn't believe it, And
that's wild.
Then the WrestleFest came out, and Crush was on it. It was kind of the same game.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great feeling that must have been, though, to be the coach and having your own arcade game. Right. That's wild. That's so cool.
I tell you, I've had a great life. When I coached all these kids, and just a quick story, I called up Arn one day, and they were at the St. Paul Civic Center or somewhere. So I called Arn. I said, Arn, is there any way that you can get me tickets to the wrestling, in a couple of nights? I got my whole hockey team. They want to go see wrestling. So Arn says, yeah, come on down. I'll get you some seats. I don't know how good they're going to be or not. he ended up getting us seats right up front.
Wow.
All these kids were right there. All the wrestlers came up and everything. It was pretty neat. You get kind of spoiled when you can, call and get favors like that, But that's a neat deal. Yeah, and those are the same kids that when we were on the WrestleFest and all that.
I'm getting a production note from Dan the Man, our producer. Smash and Crush were in WrestleFest. That's the one that Tommy Fierro has in his shop, the Wrestling Collector in Stockholm, New Jersey. If they happen to remember that. And actually, we did a virtual signing there, and I think we had that conversation. He had the WrestleFest, and it was the original arcade cabinet. Nowadays, I mean, there's really no need to have an arcade cabinet. You can have I think they call it the modulator or whatever, and then you put something around it. But no, Tommy has one of the original WrestleFest arcade games, and I know whenever he has his various meet and greets there, that's always a popular feature at the store. The next question comes from Crashing Chandeliers over on Instagram, and he's got two questions. I think they're both worthy of being asked. We'll take them one at a time. First question is, I know how the referees play an integral part in matches. At least they used to. I don't know if they do as much anymore, but back then they did. I know how the referees play an integral part in matches. Curious, who were your favorites to work with? Any funny or interesting stories from the ring with referees?
Well, the referee, I have the same outlook on it. I think they're a very, very valuable part of the event. They help the match, and they can make it more exciting. And if they're not active, they can make it rather boring. Tommy Young was always a good one. He's not in that area, in New York area, but Tommy Young was probably one that hits the top of my head right away. Mm-hmm. If I mention 4 or 5, I'll probably be leaving out 4 or 5.
Yeah.
The one Tommy Young, I can mention that I remember him distinctly.
Yeah, him and Earl Hebner was phenomenal too.
Hebner, yes.
And what made a really good referee back in the day was, we had the heel dressing room and the babyface dressing room, and you could talk to the referee, and he could send messages to the other dressing room to get some points across, something that you're going to do in the ring or whatever. And if you had a bad referee, they didn't even know what you were talking about, and the message would be wrong. And then, but the referee was so important, and both those two were incredible referees. And there are other referees too that were good. But I really liked Earl Hebner,
Yeah.
And he could take
both of the Hebners were great.
Yeah, both. Yeah, but Earl, boy, he could take some bumps. You'd hit him with an elbow, and he'd fly. Tommy Young too. I guess they're all good.
I love that you mentioned that, because Tommy Young, to me, strictly from a fan's perspective, just looking at how the referees were treated, and I'm going to say WWE, NWA, because even though it was Crockett and stuff like that, they were flying under the banner of NWA at the time. So as a young fan watching, I noticed even back then there was a different treatment of the referees. In WWE, they were kind of shown to be a little more comical. I mean, you mentioned the Hebners. Of course, we know the infamous Saturday Night's Main Event finish with "he paid to have plastic surgery." They were kind of looked like sometimes as bumbling goofs. Even the babyface commentators would call them out. But when you think of Tommy Young and you watch some of those NWA World Championship matches with Ric Flair, I mean, Tommy Young as a average size man, dare I say, maybe even a man smaller in stature, he carried some authority with him. And the announcers did a great job of making you believe that's the boss. That's the guy who calls the shots. If there was a controversial finish, they'd go backstage, they'd interview Tommy Young, and he would say, "My decision is final. There's no instant replay in professional wrestling." So even as a young kid, there was a period of time before I learned about the business being a work where I really thought, like, okay, WWE is a show, but that NWA, that's real. That's a real sport. Yeah. Those guys are really, and I feel that the referee really plays a huge role in that.
The worst referee was if you'd say to him, "Whatever you do, don't see this." And then you go do something, and then they're looking right at you. And it's like, what did I just tell you? Don't see this, And some of the referees just couldn't get it,
And you know what I hate now too is when they do the count like for a chokehold and the guy doesn't break, and then they just the referee just stops counting. That drives me nuts. It's like, well, what's the point of having an official in there that has the power to end the match or cause a disqualification, and he's just going to let the talent, the workers, basically walk all over him? There's no point in having a referee. He's just there to count the three. But I feel like that's just how the psychology of the business has changed over time.
Well, and that's the guys too. The guys shouldn't be doing that to the referees either.
Exactly.
I mean, they should follow the rules the best they can, like that. But I don't know. We never cheated whenever we won titles or anything. We always did everything fair.
Never.
Yeah.
Always down the middle. By the book, Demolition. They can't take it away from them. And follow-up question from Crashing Chandeliers. Any stories or memories with Gorilla Monsoon or Jesse Ventura? Loved their calls on WrestleManias 4 and 6. I mean, two legends, Gorilla and Jesse.
Well, they were both characters. I think of the two, of course, Gorilla came across as more conservative and down the road. Jesse was off the wall, but that was his character.
Yeah.
He was outlandish and flamboyant, but both of them did a great job.
Both of them could get you over with their talking. When you're trying to be a heel and you're having a match and it's 3 or 4 minutes in there, both of those two guys were so good they could tell the people the story about you. And I got along with both of them great. Jesse, I knew Jesse a lot better than Gorilla, but you probably knew Gorilla better than Jesse, huh, Bill?
Yeah, a little bit, but we in our situation, both of us, we really weren't around them that much, but they worked off of each other great too.
Yeah.
I mean, they complemented each other.
Yeah, I just felt so bad for Gorilla when Joey died. That was terrible. He was a really, really good kid.
And there's another one who was a good referee.
Yeah,
Joey.
Yeah,
Joey Morella.
But that broke Gorilla Monsoon's heart. He wasn't the same after that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that he was still able to continue on for a number of years after that. I mean, to work in the same place that you worked with your son and have him, pass away under such tragic circumstances. So I give Gorilla Monsoon all the credit in the world for being able to do that. But Barry, you mentioned knowing Jesse Ventura pretty well. Did either of you, but I guess I'll put this to Barry because it sounds like you knew him a little better. Did any of you ever see that he would wind up having the trajectory that he wound up having? I'm not even talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about politics, becoming the governor of Minnesota. I mean, he is an intellectual, but I mean, he has no problem telling you how he feels about certain things. And you're a very affable, laid back kind of a guy. I could imagine that would be an interesting conversation, you and Jesse Ventura together.
Well, I knew he was going to become the governor. He did a really good job as the mayor. Mm-hmm. And, we train at the gym and you'd see him all the time. And he came up to me one day and he goes, Darso, he says, did you know I really am going to be the governor, and I was just kind of like, yeah, sure, Jesse. And he says, no, I'm serious. I'm going to become the governor. So he had his first debate and he just tore the other guy up. I said, this son of a, he's going to be the new governor. And he says, I got a little trick under my belt here for the next one. So he had these commercials where he had his action figure up on the dashboard of a bus. And as soon as he did that, I just went, he's going to be the governor. Yeah. And that commercial got over so big, everybody voted for him. It was just unbelievable. Yeah. So he's the governor and still going to the gym training and doing everything just like normal. I mean, Jesse's a good guy. Jesse loves Jesse, though,
Yeah, well, you can tell. He's one of those guys, though, I find him fascinating, even if I'm not agreeing with anything he's saying. And I do agree with him on quite a few things. But sometimes there's things where I'm like, whoa, that's off the reservation. But I could watch him talk to anybody and just make it entertaining and how he doesn't back down. And at one of the 80s wrestling cons, I believe 2 years ago, he was the main ticket guest. And it was just so funny to see him interacting with some of the talent from back in the day, because after he spent hours signing, he got up and he was walking around to everybody. And like no time had passed. And in front of
Yeah.
people, he didn't care. And I'll never forget, he walked up to Tito Santana, who we're going to be having on a future episode. And he was like, remember when I used to call you Chico?
Yeah, that was good.
Nowadays, I'd be in jail. Like, and it was just not hello, how are you? He's just that guy. And every person that, he had a line for everybody that went up to him. One guy said, oh, Governor, thank you for your service. And he was like, I did it for the money. Like, this guy is insane.
I would like
you do a good impression of him.
Oh,
right?
thank you. Not as good as Karrion Kross, but pretty good.
He's probably one of those voices that everybody wants to be able to, mimic or whatever. And you hear some terrible ones. I'm terrible at it, but yeah, you got a good one there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
But I've always liked Jesse, and I think, a lot of people probably don't like Jesse too, because they don't understand him, but he really is a good guy.
Well, he doesn't care because he's out. I'm living in the Baja off the grid. But what a character, what a great guy. And of course, Gorilla Monsoon, there's actually a book coming out about him, written by Brian Solomon, that I really look forward to reading, because he's one of those guys that, a big piece of my childhood. And, I think more people should know about just how much of a hand Gorilla Monsoon played, not just with commentating, not just his in-ring career, but what he did for specifically the WWF.
Well, then they actually named a spot, of course, the Gorilla position, and that was the position where he'd have all the cameras there, and you had to stand right by him, and he'd give you the go-ahead to go to the ring. That was the Gorilla position, and that still is called the Gorilla position.
To this day, actually on Netflix, on WWE Unreal, when they scan, there's the finger pointing and it says Gorilla. I mean, it doesn't even say position. It's just named Gorilla. I think we have time for two more. And again, keep those questions coming. We didn't even get to all the ones we wanted to get to tonight, but keep them coming. Follow Demolition Pod on Instagram. Follow Search and Destroy You on Instagram. Follow me, Ryan Maher Comedy. Send the questions. We will get to everybody's. And in the future, you're going to see more lengthier episodes where we devote it just to questions. There's going to be a lot of cool things that we're going to be doing to be more interactive with the fans. And like always, we appreciate all the sharing and all the comments and subscriptions and you name it. Without you guys, the fans, this show doesn't exist. But I wanted to ask this question, and it came in anonymously, but it says, were there talks to bring Demolition back at any point past the early 90s, like Demolition in the Attitude Era, or Demolition going over to WCW with a different name? Barry, I know you were in WCW, but Bill, and I know, and we'll get into it on future episodes, but I know you were over in Japan, but was there ever an olive branch extended where they were like, guys, come in for a program, do something, or no? Was it pretty much no contact?
WWF or WCW?
Well, either or.
No, we didn't have any positive contact at that time with the office at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was a number of years before anybody even reached out to us. I think the first time was for a video game, but that was probably 5 or 6 years, wouldn't you say, Barry?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they weren't going to pay much money on. Well, the first one that we were on the video game, but then the next one, it was action figures they called, and the money was so bad that we said, no, we'd rather not even have an action figure. Remember that one?
Yep. Yeah.
Next question comes from YouTube. It's from GPTX6ZZT. That's quite the name. Could you possibly ask Bill about wrestling with Gary Robbins in Demolition Hux in New Japan?
Well, he was I think his actual height was about 7'5" or 7'4". Nice guy. That's about all the positives I can say. It didn't work out. It was asked to go over to Japan to see if we could reignite the Demolition tag team. And to be very honest with you, after the first night, myself and the Japanese office decided it wasn't going to work. So it lasted one match. Not that there was anything against him other than the fact that he wasn't a wrestler. He was just a big giant guy that had broken into wrestling in Canada, and they thought they could utilize it, but it didn't work.
You can't replace the originals. I mean, with all due
Oh
respect to
no.
the late great Brian Adams Crush, we talked about it on the last episode. I mean, they had their own thing. It was an interesting dynamic, but you cannot replace the originals. It's just, it doesn't work in music and it doesn't work in professional wrestling. It just doesn't. And I guess we'll end with this one. This came across on YouTube 2 weeks ago, and I found it very interesting. It's from a person on YouTube called In Dark Places. And they said, since you guys have mentioned the Road Warriors, a buddy of mine went to a house show in Huntington, West Virginia, right after WWF had signed the Warriors. They hadn't even been on TV yet, and in those days, we didn't have a clue about the backstage things and new people getting signed, etc. My buddy said Demolition, the Faces, came out and cut a full-on heel promo directed toward the Road Warriors. Demolition went on to continue being faces on TV for the next few weeks until the Warriors got there. I would love to hear the backstory of that. Now, we did discuss in the last episode about Bill, due to the health issues you were having, they rushed this heel turn without really any explanation and whatnot. But were there talks as there was negotiations with the Warriors where they were like, all right, guys, we're going to bring them in. We're going to work with you. Or was it just like, hey, the Road Warriors are coming in. Let's figure it out. I mean, if you were cutting promos during house shows, I would think that would be to kind of set things up. Do you have any recollection of that?
I don't have any recollection of it at all, to be honest with you. And I don't understand why I don't think it would have been a television production.
No,
I
he's saying
remember
it's a
going to
house show.
Huntington.
He's saying it's a house show.
I don't see why we would even be doing promos at a house show about two potential opponents that aren't even there. Would you, Barry?
No, I can't remember that either. But I can remember there was a little scuttlebutt that the Road Warriors were coming in, and we were like, what's that going to be like? And how are they going to do it? And they never really talked to us how they were bringing them in or whatever. It just ended up happening, and we never found out when they were coming in. They just all of a sudden they were there. Right, Bill?
And when they initially showed up, did you guys think like, oh, okay, this is going to be money? Or was it like, oh, no, they're going to put us off to the side? I mean, I would imagine at first you probably thought that like, okay, this is going to be a natural feud for us.
I thought it would have. I thought it would have been, and I still think that it could have been a money-making move for the company as well as them and us. And there again, getting back to the point where the gentleman was mentioning, I'm not discounting his recollection. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if and we've talked about it before. It was really a tough situation. They needed to get over first, I thought, before they put them with us.
Yeah,
and keep us apart and make it a big angle, because then I think it would have been a big money thing. But it ended up being where they came in and the matches were good, but not like what Bill and I are used to having. And it just kind of fizzled out, I thought. And it didn't get them over, and it hurt us.
Yeah.
And at that time too, we were baby faces.
Yeah.
And had a good following from the fans. So it's funny because there again, this past weekend, a couple of the fans came up to us and said, "Why did you guys turn bad again?" And I had no good explanation for them, other than the fact that that's what the office wanted.
I'm sorry, Barry. Go ahead.
And then they tried to, they put masks on us. They tried to change us.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing to do, is change a team. Because somebody else came in. It didn't make sense. None of it did.
I was going to have that be the last question, but because you guys touched on it just now, I figured we could go with this one. And, you probably answered it already, but I was going to add to it a little bit. This one came from Mike G is Me on YouTube. And he said, I often wonder what 1990 would have looked like if Axe hadn't had health problems. Was a heel turn always the plan after WrestleMania? I think Demolition was at peak popularity between WrestleManias 5 and 6. The heel turn plus Crush just made no sense. So you kind of just pretty much answered that question, but I'll add to it by asking this. I mean, everything obviously did change once you had the health scare, Bill, but you guys had beaten Andre and Haku at WrestleMania 6 and you won the tag team titles. How far out is the booking mapped? Like, you win the tag titles and is it just like, okay, we're going to do what they tell us next? Or when you win those tag team titles, do they say, whether it be Vince or Pat Patterson or Bruce Pritchard, whomever is in charge of creative, do they say, okay, this is what we're hoping to do over the next couple months? You guys just beat Andre and Haku. Now you're going to move on to this. Or is it just you won the tag titles and whatever they say goes?
Well, normally you would think that they would sit down with you and plan that out, just like we're talking about 6 months or 8 months down the road. But in my experience, in particular in WWE or WWF at that time, that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And Barry and I probably wouldn't have known what we're going to do other than the fact that we did commercials and promos 3 weeks ahead.
Yeah.
But you would think that that's the way it's supposed to be. But no, that didn't happen.
But we were very good business people. We had a job. We did what they asked. Sometimes we'd say, can we do it this way or whatever? And sometimes they would say, yeah, go ahead and do it that way, or say, no, this is the way we got to do it. But they knew that we were going to do whatever they said. And that's probably why they never did set up a whole long program with us. We were probably on the fence the whole time, right? Who knows what the agent said about us all the time?
Well, that's that old school mentality. I mean, you guys were doing what you were supposed to be doing. But you know what? Regardless of everything, and we said this in the last episode, I mean, what's the old expression? You turn chicken shit into chicken salad. I mean, you really did a great job with everything changing on the fly like that. And right now we have to wrap up this episode where it was strictly devoted to asking Demolition questions. And again, keep those comments coming on YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow Demolition Pod on Instagram, follow Search and Destroy You, follow Ryan Maher Comedy, follow everybody, keep spreading the word, get the word out. The more subscriptions we get, the more listeners that we get on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, the more viewers we get on YouTube, the bigger and better these shows are going to become. And I want you to stay tuned very closely over the next couple of weeks because you're going to learn about some giveaways that we're going to be doing. And a lot of that's going to be covered on the next episode of DemoPod. Guys, anything you want to say before we sign off?
Well, I want to thank the fans for paying attention. We've got a lot of positive feedback on Instagram, and then when we go in conventions and signings, and everybody seems to like the podcast, and we just thank you for that.
Yeah, and I never thought we'd be sitting here on the screen right now doing this. So it's all the fans. And Ryan, you're doing a great job, and I just hope all the fans subscribe and keep us going. I like telling stories. Can't remember a lot of stuff, but I love you guys.
You're doing a great job. You guys are awesome. Barry, Bill, Axe, and Smash, their Demolition. I'm Ryan Maher. We're going to see you guys real soon. Have a good one.
Here comes the action.